So this is the Dharma Guardians. We here in Fort Collins, Colorado, with Michael Gornik from Polestar Gardens. Michael has been involved with the community for about 50 years, lifelong career bond, and we're here to hear his story and what's going on with the current project of Polestar Gardens. So thank you for being here, Michael.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. So first question, what first drew you to spiritual community?
I think I became very conscious of the need for a better environment. I had a sense of how I wanted to live, and I had values, I had goals, I had interests, and I was struck by how difficult it was to get any traction on it, just bouncing around in random environments. And so I think I was struck by how important it would be to be in an environment that would just support my own spiritual search, my own expression of my values and interests in life.
Wonderful. Were you already on a spiritual path when you came to a spiritual community? Or?
I was, or at least I was trying to be, I should say. And I think that's the gap there. There's a lot of interest in spirituality, and I was reading the books and trying to meditate and doing the best I could. But without that sort of supportive environment, I really did not get very far. So when I finally came to an environment that supported all those things, it was like night and day. It was that alignment really helped me to go deep in my path, immediately, or at least much deeper.
Mm-hmm. The environment is stronger than will.
Amen. Yeah.
What was happening in your life at the time that made you feel I need community?
Well, I was a young adult. I had read Autobiography of a Yogi when I was in high school, and and other spiritual books. So I was looking at a lot of different things, and basically we were. There was a small group of us trying to create a community. This is like in our late teens, early 20s, out in the hills of Kentucky. And we didn't know what we were doing, but we were doing it hard, which was good. It was a lot of development, it was a lot of hard work. We had bought a piece of property in the middle of nowhere, and it was a tremendous effort just to get out there. What to speak of, try to build something, which we did end up building a cabin out there. So interspersed with living there, I was visiting Yogananda Village a couple of different times and getting involved in that community. And then I'd come back to Kentucky and work on that property a little bit. And at some point, I realized how just what an uphill battle it would be without moving to a place that already had some momentum and some culture around spirituality. And so a lot of different things were happening, but that was the main thing, was we were in this sort of learning phase of the importance of environment, basically. Yeah.
And what teachings or spiritual experiences kind of shaped their commitment to this path, for those who may not be familiar with the Yogananda? And
okay, yeah. I was raised Catholic, so 12 years of Catholic schooling, by the end of which I considered myself an atheist, so that didn't really help me out that much. On the other hand, when I finally went to high school, the monks at the high school were into yoga, they were into meditation, they were very progressive, and they were asking real questions. And I remember when I was a freshman in high school, there was a video they played at religion class, and it was on Buddhism. And it was like a light bulb went off, like, wow, they're really asking, what is life about? What is it about? What is this experience of the self? And so high school had a little bit of that flavor in it, where it was much more real, much more definite about each one of our experiences, and that's so that was helpful in a way. And now I've forgotten your question. I think I sort of answered
yeah,
it.
that's good. Yeah, it was just what sort of teachings kind of shaped this direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started reading a little bit about meditation. Baba Ram Dass was an early teacher. I saw him speak in 1973, and went to a workshop with him, and I started getting the SRF lessons. But I really didn't get much traction until I moved to Ananda Village, where there was daily practice. It was a very disciplined environment with a lot of orienting your life around spiritual principles and everything that entails. So wasn't too early on when I realized that Yogananda's teachings were really my path, and that I needed to go deep in them, and that's really what I wanted to do. So I got Kriya from Swami Kriyananda in 1976, and I also got it from SRF in 1979. So yeah, and that was fun. We did a little pilgrimage down there. We slept on Swami's beach. Back then you could get away with such a thing.
That's awesome.
So, didn't sleep that well, I must say, but it was great.
Okay, great.
It was Brother Anandamoy who gave the Kriya
nice.
at Mount Washington in
Nice.
1979, so that was sweet.
And then going on to living in community and kind of your time over these 50 years, what different roles or stages, maybe of personal development and maybe even just our community development, kind of you went through or experienced?
Well, internally, it's funny about life, because on one level you think, am I making any progress? And on another level you realize, wow, I've come a long way, so you sort of see both at the same time. Is that paradox there? But I think the beauty of living in community is a gradual expansion of your self-identity. When you're just so concerned with your own little mud puddle of unhappiness, as I put it, to expanding your compassion, your sympathy, your connection, your care for a larger reality, and that can start with your family, and then it can expand to your friends, and then I think in a case like Yogananda, it expands to the entire cosmos. So as he says, everyone is your own. So I think that's just a gradual process of expansion, and I think community living, especially the kind of community living we did in the early years, where we were, sharing kitchens and sharing bathrooms and sharing daily life and all those things. You definitely have to learn to expand, and you have to learn to make space for others. You have to learn to, try to draw the best out of others, to train yourself to see the best in others. And as we all know, we all don't always express the best parts of ourselves. And so we have to take a long-term view of our development, our own and everyone else's. And kind of ties into your last question, because in the end, you do look back and you realize, yes, I have grown, I have expanded, and I actually was blessed with a couple of near-death experiences, about 15 years apart, and it's something I would wish for everyone, to see their life from the end, because it can be hard to access it intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, because we're so overtaken by the hypnosis of Maya, but seeing that perspective really did change some fundamental things. What part of this is real, what part of it is eternal, and what we should be living for, why we're living. And so I think that was an experience that helped me a lot. In more the community side of it, it's always evolving. It has to be always evolving. We're all, ideally we're all growing, and life is changing, and our outer life is changing all the time as well. And so we have to be on our toes. We have to be awake. We have to bring the creativity of our souls into play, and make everything new all the time, and respond to the newness of life that's always unfolding. And so that has to happen in any community for it to remain vibrant and alive, and we saw a lot of that, and sometimes it takes the form of change. A certain form will just be over, and then something new will come forward. It is just everything that's created here has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we get to see all of those cycles every day, and you see it in a community a lot. People come and people go, and whether they stay in the community or in your life and then pass away, we're all just passing through. I often say community is like a river. It's a channel, and the water is never the same. It's constantly changing, and that is a reality about life and community. I think our goals for Polestar is to create that culture, that container, that riverbed that helps it to flow in a certain way, and when you have that, it can definitely, and we've seen this already because we've been in communities for almost 50 years. It can be generational. What we have the ability to give to our kids and grandkids and everyone who comes after, some of the life and spirit that we have lived, and I think that's a wonderful thing about community. We are, in a sense, speaking to our we're speaking to the next generations.
Sure.
I think of that when I plant a tree, and or you create something that many others will benefit from. It connects us all. And of course, by the same token, all those who have come before us. You think of how the communities movement got here and the energy Master put into it. We're definitely riding on all that energy and all that inspiration. So it's a great thing to be in that link and to feel that connection, forward and back. So it's great.
That's really powerful. What have been the most difficult or refining challenges?
Refining or defining?
Refining.
Refining. I like that. Okay, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Let's see. Well, almost dying was difficult, and I feel like the first time it happened, I Master calls it the final exam, and I think I pretty much flunked. Well, I had a 2-year-old, and I had, and I had not done the work, and so I didn't have a ton of regrets, but neither was I ready, and so. Second time I passed, though. Not really sure why I came back, honestly. but anyway, that was hard and also wonderful, and this is how life is, If you take whatever happens, I really believe this, and this is my definite experience in life. Whatever happens, if you take it in the right way, you will find the great blessing in it. And it's just, I think it's a law. It's just, as Master said, life isn't here to torture you; it's here to liberate you. And so, if you take it in that spirit, you will definitely find that blessing. And that's been the case. I've had some pretty extreme, as we all do. Nobody gets off this planet without having their feet held to the fire, one way or another, And but the other big hard one for us was when time came to leave Ananda Village. We had been there 24 years. We had all our dear friends there. Our kids grew up there, and it was basically heartbreaking, and also the right thing. We knew it was the right thing, So, yeah, and I think there is a lot of refinement in all that, It just, our Dharma was to just do something a little different, a little more. We wanted to create a community that was just more based on Yogananda's universal teachings, not so much the specific. So kind of the how to live teachings, really.
Yeah. Because
everyone's on the path of trying to figure out how to be well, how to feel well, how to get along with their family and their neighbors, and how to find meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. It's just very universal. And what we found in a community is, you have your kids. You want to be in community with your kids, and they may or may not be interested in your particular spiritual path, but like I said, they're still facing all those things. Everyone is, and so our goal for Polestar is to have a real deep practice, and we've manifested this before, where we just had very deep, regular practice, and some amount of diversity in that, like Buddhists and even Christians, and there's a lot of people out there who are interested in meditation these days, And where do you go to find people meditating deeply? I mean, where? It's not like it's a happening thing in very many places. So that's a real service to provide that, make that available, and to make people from different paths feel welcome there. The silence of spirit is universal. That is like our native tongue right there. That is the soul's home. So to share that kind of space with others beyond what they believe or their philosophies or whatever, I think is just a great service. And it's also just practical, because what I found, I was telling you this the other day, is you just never know who's going to be touched by what, and what will bring people to a deeper awareness of themselves and their path, or even to find Yogananda's path, So it is, it's practical to just be really open and inclusive, and our strategy has been to be very clear about who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and anyone's invited. If they can, if they want to draw on that and participate and make a flow of giving and receiving in that, they're more than welcome. And I care much more about how people want to live than what they believe. It's really more about what's inside and how you want to bring that to your life. So
I really like what you said about the community being like a river and ever new joy, ever changing. Yeah. What would you say are maybe just three core principles that kind of form that riverbed that allows for the right kind of structure, the right kind of space container to hold?
Oh, yeah, good. Well, I'll give you 4, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because we do talk about the 4 pillars.
Okay.
We call it the 4 pillars of community harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And they are holding sacred space, so sharing sacred space. And in our tradition, that's very easy because we're committed to daily practice and meditation. So you have a group of people who spend time in silence together. That carries a long way because, when you're in silence, nobody's acting out through their ego. There's no, you're connecting with that place behind the movie, and you're remembering that you're one in that space, So it's just, but also sacred music, and there's other ways people tap into that, nature experiences, etc. But for a group of people who are trying to harmonize, sharing sacred space is number 1. And then number 2 is creative service. And I really think the creativity is part of that. We've got to be digging in to find some juice in there that we can share. That's got to be, not just show up at work and, do the task. It's like we have to be creative here. We have a chance to be, very creative. You've probably heard that quote from Yogananda, do something that will dazzle the world,
Yeah.
Which I would never say that out loud. But it was funny because we had CSU students worked on our design guidelines. And so I think it was a graduate student or maybe an intern, I'm not sure. But she did a lot of the work and she researched Yogananda's quotes, and that's the one she pulled out. So that's at the top of our design guidelines, is do something that will dazzle the world. I wouldn't have gone quite that far, but anyway. But I think also just serving, being in the trenches with each other for something that's beyond your own interests. That's for each other, for the world, for a larger group, a larger identification of yourself, is transcending and tends to, diminish ego involvement and remember soul connections. And then third one is sharing food together. So just a very human and bonding and beautiful, warm thing to do. And then the last one we always talk about is play. And this is in part the creativity, I think, too. It's something that we seem to get worse at when we're adults, and I always say we have to work at play, unfortunately, because, we get so serious about everything, we get like, it is, we don't need to be that serious, we need to remember what it is to be a child. We are all still children. We need to, and playing with each other just in, is just a really ego diminishing thing. We're just, so having fun together, any kind of play is very bonding for a group. And what we've seen over many years, and we try to put those things on the calendar, so you're hitting those boxes all along the way. And so when you fall off on one or the other, you're going to see less than you could be in terms of just having a vibrant, connected community. I used to say that attendance at morning sadhana is inversely proportional to drama in the living room. there's a certain amount of truth to that, but all four of those count for that very much. They're very, very helpful, and I think community gets magnetic when you have that. You know, all those things are happening all the time. It's just like you don't really have time to be heavy. You're too busy serving, meditating, having fun. You sort of you crowd out all the weeds just by planting all the good all the good plants. You know.
Yeah.
So
I like that a lot. Something that's been interesting here in our time. One, we've been able to see that wonderfully, and then something that I've seen used here is like the fearless leader. So I was kind of wondering what's kind of that coming from, and so maybe some of the leadership principles that comes up in community living.
Yeah. Well, we just joke, and I always call Keith the fearless leader because he's heading everything up out here, and I know it's hard work. You know, it's hard work, and a lot of times he's by himself in these days. But no, I think I do think leadership is important, and I think that from the leader side, the understanding is that the leader is the servant. You know, and it's really the most important thing I think a leader has to remember is, just that your goal is to make your life of service. You know, and that I think is a principle that will carry you a long way. I think there's a lot of questions in everyone's mind about leadership now, because we have a lot of bad examples of leaders, and there's a lot of pitfalls in leadership, and then so there's a lot of movement in the communities movement around how to make that work, like the sociocratic governance, like I was telling you about, and etc. And I think there is communal evolution happening about learning about all that and growing into that. And I think leadership has a role. It's a skill. It helps. It's an important aspect of generating magnetism when somebody has qualities of leadership and you want to, you see somebody doing something magnetic and you want to be involved in that. That's part of how we work together, So, I think I think we're all learning a lot about it right now, because it seems like a hard thing right now. It seems like we're having a difficult time as a country and beyond in really understanding how leadership should work for us and can work. And I do think it comes back to that the great leaders are really just servants. There's nothing, no big deal about it. It's just trying to make your life serviceful. And if that's a skill you have, then you use it. It's so I don't know if that helped your question.
Definitely. That was great. And for the current project of Polestar Gardens.
Oh yeah.
Very exciting. Maybe just for people who don't know, what is Polestar Gardens and what's the vision behind it, and maybe even a little bit of history, because it's been going on for a long time now.
You bet. My wife and I started Polestar Gardens Inc. It's a 501c3 educational nonprofit, so it's not a religious nonprofit. And really our goal was to build community as a container for optimizing the physical, mental, and spiritual development of all the people who live there. So it's really been a lot about students of all ages, although Polestar has done a lot of youth programs, and it's kind of what we're more known for. You know, we did for decades programs for high school and college students. So we started that in the year 2000. Yeah, little history. The fun and amazing part of the story is we were in Northern California for a while, and had trouble finding a spot there. We were trying to get into a real estate project, and it didn't happen. And then some doors opened on the big island of Hawaii. We ended up going there. So we bought a place there, and then we outgrew it in a few years. And then we bought 20 acres, and we started building what became Polestar Gardens in Hawaii. And we had a great run there. We were about 15 years there. Only about 10 or 11 of that was on the new land. And we had, a wonderful temple and a community center and a large house with lots of guest rooms and a bunch of cabins and tent sites and, organic farm and growing all the tropical fruits. And we just had a really great run there. People from all over the world came and visited us there, and we have a network of friends now that are just, have had that experience. And then in 2018, the Kilauea eruption happened, and we were all evacuated, and lava flowed all the way around our property. So we, they have these maps that show you where it's going to flow. So we knew it was going to flow along the north there, and we're living for weeks, actually more like months. You got your go bag ready. You've got a gas mask next to your bedstand. You're ready to move when it comes. And like 5 cop cars came screaming down the road, said, "You got to get out now." So we all were ready. We got in and we got out of there. And then it took a couple more months because it was a historically large flow. It actually never touched the property, interestingly enough, but it started a fire that burned down the main house and burned down the temple. So just, and they were our 2 best buildings. And we just knew it was over. We just knew, there were a few other buildings standing there, which we did end up fixing up, and we resold the property eventually. But Anne was willing, and I certainly was too, to try again. So we had lava insurance. We had, for the first time, the nonprofit had a few nickels to rub together, and we started a search for where we might go next. And this is where we ended up. So we're in Fort Collins, Colorado, and some good friends of ours who are Yogananda devotees farmed this parcel for 35 years as an organic farm. And about the time we lost our community, they were retiring from farming and suggested we come out and look. And we were committed to turning over every stone. And we looked at many different places, Oregon and Arizona and New York, and even a place in Europe. It was all over the map. But this place was perfect in the sense that we wanted a less remote environment. We wanted to create a community that was really accessible for people. You could have a job. There was an economy. It wasn't a retreat, although you could have retreats. It was a place where you had schools your kids could go to, and you could make your daily life integrated in the larger society, but very spiritualized. And that's really been the vision all along, is you have to live there. Going on retreat is great, and we should all do it as often as we can. But what about every other day? And if you can weave that into that culture right into your daily life, that's like that's the power of community. That's when it really can make a difference in everyone's life, because it's just woven into the fabric of of each moment. So, yeah. Anything else about Polestar?
Yeah,
I should
definitely.
say.
Maybe because I'm sure whenever we talk about community, people are always interested about maybe some of the granular stuff like governance
Okay.
and
Yeah.
housing, stuff like that. If you could talk a little bit about the governance structure you
Okay.
use,
You
the
bet.
housing programs, and
Well, we've been real involved in the co-housing movement, and they've been around. You may or may not know, but there's 400 plus co-housing communities in America, and 2 of them right here in Fort Collins. So there's been a learning there. People have learned about a lot of different things, and then of course, all over America are homeowners associations, which is a form of community, and it has a very negative connotation for most people, HOAs. But that is the most obvious legal structure for owning property and having shared, common amenities. And so Polestar will have an HOA. We call it the PCOA, the Polestar Community Owners Association. And basically, we've just tried to create a governance that was, we probably would have leaned more into a sociocratic model if we were deeper into it or had more time. But there's so much legal work to be done to make this thing go forward. That we did a more traditional thing. There's a board. It's comprised of 7 members, one of which is a representative from the nonprofit. And then Polestar Gardens will actually own the community center and the temple. And it will have an agreement with the HOA, the PCOA, to make it available, which is the point. But we wanted to do it that way because we wanted to ensure that Polestar wouldn't someday get voted off the island by a HOA that says, I'm tired of meditating. I'd rather, let's put in billiard tables or something,
Sure.
So it's a lot of trouble to go to not try at least to set it up to go down the decades, So we're keeping the main community center and temple as owned by Polestar, and the rest of all the amenities are owned by the PCOA. And then, but we put right into our documents that this is how we want to function. We want to have sociocratic circles, and we want it to work like this. And really, that's my experience at Ananda was like that as well. That's really how it worked. People who are most involved in a particular area have the most say about it. They also have to develop the ability to be receptive and inclusive of others' input. And but you want a lot of autonomy, so that people can grow and people evolve and the community can evolve. Because when you have that autonomy, there's more opportunities for growth and progress on every level. And you also want to have a mechanism for feedback so people can, so the way we've set it up is that we're going to function that way. And if we ever really hit a roadblock and when things get tough, nobody really looks at the legal documents until there's, it's like, what's supposed to happen here? And we put that in place. So if it ever gets to that point, you can look and say, okay, this decision requires a 2/3 majority. This one is a simple majority. You can find your way. You won't be held up by just people not, being able to agree. Sociocracy is based on consent, not on consensus, which allows for a little more mature process of just allowing things to go forward, even though you may not agree with them. Everybody else wants to do it, and it's not going to hurt anything or anybody if they put out the energy, And so it's, I think that was, I think Kriyananda had a lot of good leadership instincts and abilities to allow people to grow, make mistakes, kind of be put in charge of things that were over their current ability in order to expand their abilities, etc. And I think that kind of opportunity is very prevalent in a community setting. So.
Do you think that training or experience helped you to create such a inclusive space while still having trust that the Polestar, so to speak, remains the same, remains focused?
Well, that's why we are keeping the ownership of that. And also Polestar has its charter and it has a board, and it's very clearly defined what we're about.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think that's a legitimate question. I think my experience is, if you have a very strong core of dedicated people who are really committed to deep meditation and service, you can carry a lot of energy and magnetism and keep things on course, So I think, we of course can't control what's going to happen, and but that's our solution, and I think for someone like me that meets my needs for satsang and connection that I have, others who really want to show up and meditate deeply and really value serving, and that core group really sets a tone for the rest of the community, and carries a lot of magnetism. So, yeah.
Great. And kind of in closing, is there anything you want to say about Polestar Gardens that wasn't asked, or for people interested?
Polestarvillage.com. Go check out our website. Come and visit us. We're right at a critical spot right now where I've been saying that for 4 years. We're always at the crux. But we took 4 years to get the entitlements through the city. So it's just was a hellacious, torturous process. But now we can start building. And so we've raised a ton of money to get this far, and we need another half a ton to break ground and do phase 1. And no, this place will be has the potential to just be an incredible container for light and master's teachings and conscious living, and it's an amazing location north of Denver. I think it has a real unique opportunity to bring a lot of diverse people who also have common values together, which I think was close to Master's heart. The Church of All Religions is kind of the community of all religions. We do have Buddhist investors and one Christian investor and Sikhs, and it's so. I think the thing I would say in closing is that I look at where our society is right now and the turmoil we're having. This is really the solution. This not to make it grandiose at all, but just that small groups of us are trying to live better, learn how to love each other, learn how to serve each other, learn how to find ourselves, and to go deep in spirit and awaken. And it's this simple. We don't have to think about too much else. If we're focused on that, we're going to find the way. And I think small groups who feel the inspiration to do that really have to act on it now. It's important. Yeah, I think it's good work, and it's important work.
Yeah.
So,
what would you say to those who are interested in building community, want to go out and do it, maybe even particularly for young people who have this? What sort of words of wisdom or encouragement you can give to them?
Yeah, well, I would say what you guys are doing is a really great start. Going around and studying and seeing how people are doing it, and even living in communities for a period of time. And there's a lot of wisdom out there, and people are learning every day about it. So I think that's probably the best thing, is to go to thriving communities or emerging communities or developing communities, and just do just what you're doing. Talk to people, take notes, start finding those people who resonate with you on a deep level, and start meditating together and visualizing. And yeah, I think you guys are doing all those things, and that's probably the best thing that's to be done. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Michael.
Thank
And
you.
again, if you want to learn more about Polestar Gardens, check out polestarvillage.com and get connected. Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha.